tech for 20 years, and it's funny actually, I get asked all the time about AI, and there's lots of stuff that's been around since before even AI was a word. When I started 20 years ago, it was just automation, and we were looking at all kinds of things from a business's legal team to kind of how they could do things more efficiently. And obviously now it's just kind of blown up with the rise of ChatGPT and so on. So today we're going to talk about scaling AI beyond the pilot. It's something that most teams get wrong. It's something that kind of really impacts whether you're going to see success or not. And I think if we think about now AI, I mean, hands up in the room, like who has had a conversation with a manager or a business, part of your business that has told you, we want you to use AI? Or who is actually using it on a day-to-day basis? That could be ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. Don't be shy, I know you all ChatGPT. And we can even talk into it, right? It's accessible. That's why it's kind of blown up so much, whereas tech never used to be accessible. So why do they get stuck in pilot, and why do we kind of fail to scale as such? One of the key things that organizations do is they get in this stage of, let's prove a concept works, and then let's kind of roll it out. And they focus on the wrong things. So it's human nature to focus on like a shiny object. So how many of you have seen a demo of a product that you think, oh wow, it's going to change our life, it's going to take away an hour of my time, admin, it's going to help, I don't know, the business scale up. Like if we think of Amazon, for example, the way that they deal with packaging boxes, that's done, robotically now. As a business, you could argue that, jobs were kind of changed, but actually the economy is better for it. Now, what we see with most companies is we're in a rush. So AI is kind of the top subject. Most companies that I speak to, it's even in KPIs for the executives. Bonuses are tied to it, all sorts. So the problem is it comes from the top down. And actually, generally, it's the bottom up who runs, the day-to-day. It's the people, the processes. If we think of how a business runs, and if we don't think about that when we look at AI and how to kind of run a pilot, it's going to fail. It might look good, and it's all good, as we're testing it, but it doesn't happen. Now, I actually don't believe it's a technology problem. Every technology tool out there is good in its own right. It has benefits. We have a people, culture, and processes problem. Now, what I mean by that is we look at a tech tool, and we think it's going to be great, and it's going to transform our business, and we try to backfill it. So we do it the wrong way round. And then all of a sudden, our people sitting in our teams doing all this work are like, hang on, why are you making me use this? It's not actually saving me time. It's not actually working. It's doing kind of part of the job, but you're trying to sell me this as it's making my life easier, and quite frankly, it's making my life harder. So we're stuck in this kind of, I guess, battleground, if you like. Now, if we actually flip the script and we looked at things from the other side, this would actually go away. Now, I'm not saying it would be perfect, because I don't believe any tool is ever going to be perfect. And, oh, there we go, I told you guys I would. Okay, so I'm going to get on to the next one in a moment. If we think about people and technology, one of the biggest things that we need to do is think of a use case. So again, we tend to look at tools. When we start to look at a use case, we start to see that actually we're implementing AI to fix a challenge. We're fixing a problem. We're speeding up a business unit. Maybe it's a finance team, and we're able to get invoices out quicker, which means that we get revenue through the door. Or for the sales team, it means that we have a BD team that can do more. But it's really important that it's fit for purpose. So I was on a panel just last week, and we had a company that completely got rid of all their finance team. And they brought in this snazzy AI. They were like, it's going to change everything. A couple of months in, $4 million down the drain, because it messed up. There was no one guardrailing it, So it's all well and good to kind of see something at a pilot and think, this is going to work. But it's not until it's actually in process that you're going to really kind of find out if it's fit for purpose. And when we pilot tools, we typically choose easy kind of processes. So we don't really choose the right things, right? Like if we're looking at, who's seen Microsoft? Most people here, I'm guessing, use Outlook at some point. Microsoft has a tool called Copilot, which is incredible. But everyone just tries to chuck something in, expect gold, and then they're like, it doesn't work. So lawyers say to me, oh, it doesn't draft that contract amazingly. Well, I mean, are you surprised? It's not a lawyer. Or a finance team are saying, well, it's not actually giving us every single thing that we would normally pick up on. Again, it's a data retriever. It's not got critical thinking. It's not got, that, I guess, benefit and value of a human. So when we think about all of this, the reason that we need to put more work into the pilot is because you will benefit in the long run. So if you think that you're saving time and money by shortening this period, it's just going to bite you. So I had another client who implemented a massive contract system. They spent millions of dollars, massive hotel chain, I'm not going to say who, and it all went down the pan. It didn't work. And they lost millions and millions, both cost and internal cost. So they decided to just cut their losses and stop because it just wasn't worth it. And now they've realized that because they actually went back to the drawing board, they actually brought in the right people, they've now got a process and tech that's fit for purpose. Now, maybe it doesn't fix everything, but they're now attacking it kind of piece by piece, if you like. Now, when we think about kind of, again, the people part, so I talked about processes. So AI is only ever as good as the people running it. That's just a fact. We can have tools that automate everything, but it's like putting a toddler on a bike. You don't generally put them on a bike without stabilizers, right? You teach them, they have a few tumbles, and then before you know it, they're flying. This is no different. We also have to be prepared that it's not going to just work out of the gate. We have to be prepared to experiment. And as humans, we're all fixated on this like shiny magic red button. Let's just have this kind of, create all these wins. So firstly, we need to get over that kind of scenario. The other thing is the leadership gap. So again, I like to go back to the people because again, processes and people are what really gets us, success here. So if we look at this, we typically have the 90-10 rule, as I call it. So 90% focus on technology first. So, and it's not their fault because tech companies don't help us. Tech companies are all marketing. They're all sending us, if you're a C-suite or you're a decision maker, you get 10 emails a day from tech companies saying, this is going to transform your life for HR. This is going to create you $10 million more sales. This is going to cut your X by 40%. You're getting those daily. So the vendors are not helping you because they're trying to sell to you. And you have to remember this. They're trying to sell you a tool. So they don't actually sometimes have your best interests at heart. So if we look at the 90% and we focus on the technology and we focus on it as, I guess, an IT project, it's never going to fit the people that are actually running your business day to day. So that might be HR, it might be sales, it might be operations. It could be any person or any unit in said business. Now, the other thing that we do is change management. So it's a word that a lot of people don't really we're not used to it. Realistically, it's mindset. How many of you have got an iPhone in the room? If someone comes in here today and says, oh, I want you to get rid of your iPhone, Android's best, are you going to switch? I feel like it's normally one or the other. You're either an iPhone or an Android fan. We're creatures of habit. We don't want to change. So the problem with technology is it requires huge change, intense change. It requires us to rethink the way that we do things. It requires us to be vulnerable. It requires us to potentially try something that might not work. Now, most of us create our reputation in business by not doing that. We're maybe successful because we are, our reputation is that we get stuff done, people can rely on us. So it's a hard thing to do. But underestimating change management is a big, game changer, and it's why most tech projects fail. Take the hotel chain. They got a tool that was actually good, but they didn't focus on people and why they need to adopt, why it's actually good for them. So people just didn't use it. Again, I had a client last week, and they wanted all of their business units to interact better. So you've got finance, HR, legal, and they implemented this system that apparently was going to change everything. They had loads of snazzy reports. It was just going to be, log in the morning, job done. They set it all up. They spend time, money. And the general counsel, who reports to the CEO and the CFOs, says to me, Sophie, it's not working. She says, I've got no reports. So I'm like, why? Why have you got no reports? She says, because no one's entering. No one's putting any data in this snazzy tool. The tool's not working. Now, my argument is it's not the tool that's broken. They picked the wrong tool. They also picked a tool where they didn't vet it properly. So they didn't ask their people, like, what do you do on a day-to-day basis? Like, when you get an email, what's your day-to-day? So this tool failed because it didn't interact with their systems. So these business users are using Outlook and Word and Microsoft, very, very kind of common tools. But this tool didn't connect with that. So why would they? You can't sell something that is going to save them time when they actually have to spend more time putting data in to make it work. So if they'd have actually tackled that bit first, they could have won that project. So now they've got to go back to the drawing board, scrap this tool, find another one. But again, it's not the tool that's not working. It just wasn't fit for what they're trying to do. Then if we look at the 10%, the people that lead with culture, the people and teams that make it a business transformation, these are the ones that win. Because these are the teams that, I guess, not only do they implement something that has a business outcome in a positive way, but they also keep their staff happy. So most people now are looking at staff retention. I mean, I read a report the other day about Gen Z and how, the burnout culture, they're just not in for it. They're like, I don't care that you've, climbed and had to work 30 hours without sleep. Like, I don't want to do it. So, but there's also an element of the other category that are worried it's going to, take away from them. If AI does all of that, where's my job? Like, where's my purpose? Like, how do I kind of protect myself? So some of it needs to be that you need to keep these people happy. Like, you need to reassure them. So the people that kind of create stuff to their workforce to say, we're not trying to cut our whole team. We're actually trying to make your life better. We're trying to make the job, we're trying to kind of create more of a success culture within this role. Every single department that I speak to is overrun. They all have too much to do and not enough time. And no one really is given headcount easily. So if we look at AI as a tool for that, it's actually a pretty easy sell. But we also have to make sure that we kind of keep people on side, because like I said, the organizations that have rolled out technology, if your team aren't using it, it's just never going to work. And yeah, okay, you could tell them they have to, but it's going to take time. You can't hold a gun to their head. So it just kind of creates friction, and it doesn't really help anyone. The other thing is that if we think about an organization in terms of readiness, so I had a client come to me. I mean, we all see pens on the table, right? Has everyone heard of the company BIC that all make plastic pens? So they came to me and they said, we need AI. And it was a lawyer who wants contract AI. He said, I'm convinced. I've seen all these demos. I need contract AI. So I sit down. I'm like, why? Can I ask, why? What do you want to gain from it? And he's like, well, can't you just find me a tool? I said, no, it's not how I work. So it turns out he had a disgruntled call from the business. So BIC make pens, biros. They didn't receive the ink for their pens. So they couldn't create the orders to send the orders out. So they've got supplies that haven't come. They've got customer orders that haven't gone. They've lost, their whole month's revenue for a region. So again, I said to him, all these tools, how is that going to help you? Actually, what you need is not even AI. You just need automation. You need something so that when that contract expires, or 3 months before, someone in that business is notified. Because then you can be proactive. And the problem now is it's also caused a reputational damage, because the business who are running sales, they're aggy at legal, because they're saying to them, you're holding us up now because you haven't re-signed this agreement. So legal are saying, well, hang on a minute, it's not as simple as just signing it. This is a supplier agreement. We have to make sure that, that everything is ticked off. Risk, compliance. It's not just a case of how much are they charging us for a box of ink. So there's friction between these business units. So now they've got a system that basically automates that one thing. And now the business, procurement, sales, management, and legal, they're all of a sudden friends. Well, for now. Till the next problem. But because they actually attacked it from an angle of what do we need to fix? How can we actually make this work? They were actually able to kind of solve a business problem. And again, this is why a lot of these implementations and pilots fail, because they're just focusing on tech and shiny projects. So one of the ways I like to look at it is there's kind of 4 pockets here. And you'll notice I harp on about this a lot. People is number 1. Because without people using it, it's not going to work. You're not going to get any benefit. You're not going to get data. It's just not going to go anywhere. You're just going to waste money. You're going to waste time. And all those big initiatives, out the window. Yeah, you can do a press release telling everyone how AI forward you are, but it's not actually going to help you as a company. So one of the things that we see now is you've got to build AI literacy. And by that I mean people need to understand the what, the why, and the how. So what's it for? Why am I using it? Like, why is this actually beneficial to me? So actually, business leaders need to get better at selling it to people. We're humans. We do things better when we feel like they're going to benefit us. And also, like, why? Like, what's the, what is the end result? The next thing is data. So a lot of these pilots I talked before, the reason they fail is because we focus on this, like, easy, quick win. So all of the tech vendors will come to you and be like, oh, here's a tool, it's going to automate your supply chain. Look, click a button and it's perfect. Of course it's perfect. They've got perfect test data. They've got an environment set. They've done it 5 million times. It's got like a perfect use case. How many of you have perfect use cases in your businesses? Doesn't happen, right? Because things come up, something goes wrong, someone's out of the office. Like there's, these things are not meant to, this just isn't like the way life goes. So when you come out of pilot and you hit go, all of a sudden everything goes wrong because we don't have the perfect data. We don't have the perfect use cases. We have 3 approval processes, not 1. We have people all over the world and, someone in the US is still asleep. And, we've set it up so that they have to approve it. Now we can't do anything. If we actually looked at that at the beginning and mapped out, like, what do we need? Like, what are the business steps of how we do it now that we could actually say, right, in this pilot, we want you to mimic this. That you can go to a tech company and say, here are my needs. If you can meet me here, great. If not, move on, find the next thing. AI is only as good as what you put in. Garbage in, garbage out, like most things in life. So if you don't have quality in, it's a tool that's never going to benefit anyone. And again, the tech vendors are never going to tell you this. The sales teams are never going to tell you this. They're just going to tell you, out of the box, perfect, works. And it's just not the case. The next thing is governance. The one thing that trips a lot of people up these days is regulation, compliance. I don't know if any of you have heard, but there's the EU AI Act that's kind of come out already. By 26, it's in force. Companies now are going to have to audit trail training for their employees. If you're using AI, you need to be able to kind of prove that you're actually equipping your staff. And that's across the board. Now, a bit like when we had GDPR come out, data protection, which is great, because who doesn't get 1 million emails now? Because you can unsubscribe, and people can't blast you. Dubai still kind of getting there, but we still get bombarded a little bit. This is going to be the same thing, I think. We're going to see this kind of rise of, the regulators coming hard on companies. And they're going to come after the big fish, for sure, because it's going to be big ticket money. So it's something that we can't afford to forget. It's not just about the shiny product. Does it work? We need to think about, does it fit frameworks? Like, what's our business model? For example, I was speaking to a client. I don't know if any of you have children. There's a company here called Mum's World, a bit like kind of, I guess, Toys R Us, my UK Brit in me that we used to have. And Mum's World is an online platform that sells everything from toys, clothes for kids. They even do pharmacy, so if your child needs medication. So when they deal with their kind of information, if you like, they're dealing with client information, they're dealing with medical information, because you might submit a prescription from the doctor. So they have to be really careful with what they do with that. So when they order the drugs to send to you, there's an element of what information can we send to them. Now, it's okay because they actually don't send your information, they just put an order in. So they order, X units of this, X units of that. The company that they're ordering from doesn't actually get the medical data. So for them, they need to look at their AI as, okay, as long as the AI is on the other side, as in the side of the safe data, it's okay. But if we're using it on the side of the data that could technically get us caught for compliance, we need to really think about this. Because maybe we've got clients that are, protected by different jurisdictions, things like that. So it's something that even if, it's not just lawyers that have to worry about this, it's the actual wider business. And then last, change. Change can be anything from mindset, adaptation, training. If you don't do every piece of this, it will fail, or it won't be as successful as it could be. And change is probably the biggest one. Like, I've seen clients roll out the most amazing tech, that really change kind of the way that a business runs. But if you don't train your people, if you don't run that change management piece, you're going to be firefighting. You're going to be, it's going to take you 2 years instead of 6 months. Whereas if you bring people in at the beginning, and that doesn't mean sending out a company-wide email or like a video. You need to actually bring people in small groups, and you need to actually sit and talk with them. Now, sometimes what helps is having a champion, so you can't talk to everyone. So maybe you have a champion for each business unit. So you have your sales manager, your HR manager, and you kind of get them in a space where they feel that they can go to their teams and they can tell them what we need and how to move forward. Once we do all of this, we can scale up. And the end result is that you typically find a tool or a process that's going to work. So one of the things I like to talk about is, like, what does success look like? And this is the reason that tools generally fail, because they're one size fits all, they're shiny demo, fantastic salesperson on the other side. Now, organizations that scale successfully don't buy quick wins, they don't buy into it, and they look at, like I said earlier, what do we need? What am I trying to do? Am I trying to speed up production because we're a supply company? Am I trying to increase revenue and we just don't have enough people, we can't add sales headcount? What are you trying to do? So you have to work from an outcome basis, and then you have to work backwards. So again, we're not kind of buying something and then saying, let's find a space for it at the table. We need to think, what do we want? Now, one of the quickest ways to do this is to talk to your people. Ask them, like, what's the bottleneck? What frustrates you? What annoys you? What stops a project from getting done? Is it an email? Is it the fact that you're dealing with managers across the globe and you have to wait for the US to wake up? What is that bottleneck for the business? Once you know this, you can then start to map out the process. So what you'll notice here is the tech actually comes last. So once we map the process, we start to look at things like, okay, so if we could, what is utopia? What's utopia to you if you could have it? Is it that you didn't have to wait for that person? Is it, just that this process was easier and it didn't take 30 emails? And then we can draw out a map of, okay, so if we fix that, and here's our new map, now how do we do it technologically? Can we do it technologically? What do we need to do that? Do we need a tool? Do we need maybe even just our IT team to kind of build us something. So one of the biggest misconceptions here is that we need to spend a fortune on AI tools. And some of them cost, the earth. I mean, for a lot of firms that are looking at kind of enterprise-wide tools, there are some out there that are like $500 a person per month. If you do the maths for big companies. And again, this is because we're in a supplier-led industry. If we scale it back and we actually know what we need, our IT teams can sometimes build it for us. The problem is that often you go to them and you ask them for something that they don't really understand. So sometimes it's not even just AI. It's that we need a little bit of automation, and then we need AI to come in, because that's where it really gets powerful. There's a difference between, a lot of you use ChatGPT, I'm guessing. When we think of kind of static AI, as in questions, asking something, we also have something called agentic AI, which is the next thing that's going to, well, it's already here, but it's not quite blown up yet. And agentic AI is where companies are going to be able to use AI to actually facilitate a workflow. You're not going to type in a text box saying, give me this data. It's basically going to do the workflow for you. So an email comes in and it's going to route it to the right person, and again, it still needs guardrails. It's not perfect. You're going to have points where a human checks it, like the company that lost $4 million. I'm sure they're not going to do that again. I'm sure they're rehiring their finance team. But I'm also sure that they're bringing in tech to do what it can do. So the real kind of successes come from, again, the people, not the technology. And I've seen it in everything from automation of triaging. A company that gets 1 million calls a day or 1 million emails. It's how could we actually create a process that's better? This is something that then effectively propels us forward. So one of the things that I kind of like to focus on is this is a transformation piece. This isn't about technology. And again, AI as a term hasn't helped us here, because it's very, we're all we've been sold the dream of how to make this possible. But the one thing that I will say, and from working with clients for, like I said, 20 years, is that it is transformational. And it can literally change the way that you run a business. But if you don't do all these things that we've talked about, change, people, processes, it's something that you're just going to find yourself chasing a dream and probably not getting the end result. So I'm aware I've talked for quite a long time now. Any questions from anyone?
Thanks very much. Really enjoyed that presentation. Would agree with pretty much everything you've said across there around kind of the way we need to shift how we look at it. What do you find has been your most successful way of also convincing the clients to come around to that kind of point of view? Like you said at the very start, 90%, 10%, 90% take the other approach. They take the shiny object, they take the thing that's off the shelf, they buy it because they've been sold to. How do you find actually getting your customers bought into the other thought process?
So here's where you have to think of it as we have to sell it to them. That's just unfortunate. We have to sell it to them. And the way that we sell it to them is storytelling. I mean, I think storytelling is probably one of the best things anyone can do in life anyway. So we have to reframe it so let's say, for example, I talked about the BIC, the pens company, right? That lawyer wanted a system to benefit the lawyers, right? Because it was a contracting issue. So he said to me, how can I sell it to the CFO? Because I've gone to the CFO and he's just told me, get back in your box. Legal cost me an arm and a leg. You're not getting any money. Just carry on. So I said to him, we need to change it, because you've gone to him and you've said, legal are overrun, we don't have time, we need to process contracts quicker. What we need to do is we need to find the business problem. So the business problem is that BIC lost out on X dollars that month because they didn't send boxes of pens out the door. So sales are angry because they didn't get their commission, because they missed their quarterly targets. So you've got all these business units that are really not happy with you. So when we go to the CFO, we have to build a story of, we want this tool so that we can release revenue that gets stuck, so that it can keep the sales team happy because it keeps their pipeline moving. So we have to put it into what I call a business outcome. So we have to sell it to them. Now, sometimes it's actually just about fear of, I had another client, massive hedge fund in London. She says to me, the CEO's told me we need to get AI, it's like a board initiative, and the team are really worried because they think they're all just going to get sacked. Like they think they're just going to bring it in and it's going to cut jobs. So you also have to think of how you can sell it to a team of, this isn't going to take over your job, this is going to take over potentially a huge chunk of the workflow that you do, but maybe that workflow's not that good anyway. Like who wants to be sat doing something, data entry or typing for 3 hours? So we could sell it to them and say, well, actually, instead of you doing this, and I had this conversation with Rich earlier, if you've got a BD team and, they're just filling in data, a CRM, or they're trying to create a lead list manually, and they're looking on LinkedIn, they're typing in names. If we can automate that process for them, they can actually do their job better because they can focus on the stuff that actually kind of turns the needle, i.e. get sales through the door, because they can be on more meetings, they can speak to more clients. So we have to think about what does that person want? What does that person want out of their role? And then we can try and build the story for how that kind of tool is going to impact them. And that's how we prove kind of business ROI, I guess, as well. And if you can find a metric, that's good as well. So if if the company's losing money, if there's, if you can find that, that's going to be kind of game changing. And someone will have that, maybe the head of that department, you can speak to them. That always helps.
Thank you so much. That's all we've got time for, I'm afraid, for this session. But thank you so much, Sophie.
Okay.
It was a fantastic session.
Thanks.
We've got one more session left of the conference before we begin